Welcome to the Inventory Nation podcast, a show designed to bring you the incredible voices and stories of veterinary professionals coast to coast, all while helping you to manage and control your inventory. I'm your host, Nicole Clausen, coach, advisor, and champion for veterinary teams and their inventory. Joining you live from the mountains of Montana, welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Inventory Nation podcast. You're listening to episode number 4. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Rebecca Regan, inventory manager and veterinary technician extraordinaire at Big Sky Animal Medical Center, a general practice, referral, and emergency practice in Montana. Rebecca has graduated from the Bell Ray Institute of Animal Technology in 2004 and has been managing inventory for the last 2.5 years. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. So tell us your story. How did you get started in veterinary medicine?
Well, I mean, probably like anybody else, I never really thought of myself doing anything else than working with animals. From being little, that's all I wanted to do is be with animals and, make sure they were happy and healthy. And so when I graduated high school, I ended up going to Bell Ray Institute and graduated there. I did work at 2 clinics and a boarding facility when I was going to school at the same time and loved every bit of it.
That's amazing. So it was just kind of like a natural progression, like it was your purpose in life. That's amazing. So tell me, how did you kind of make the transition into inventory? So I know that you were kind of a veterinary technician for a while. How did you make that transition to inventory?
It was actually kind of an accident, I guess you would say. I worked nights at the emergency clinic. So they would randomly ask me, hey, can you kind of help out with some of the inventory at night? So I kind of would randomly, count stuff, make sure stuff was in stock. And then the girl that was actually doing it, the main part of it, ended up moving. And so that's when I got asked to do it. So it's kind of handed to me by some random act,
yeah.
Which it was definitely kind of scary to have that on my shoulders at first, but I really do love it.
That's amazing. That's so cool. So in the practice, how many veterinarians are working? Like how large is the practice?
Gosh, we have, I think right now, about 9 or 10. We just lost one of our awesome emergency doctors. So we are looking for another one. So right now we kind of have random ones throughout the state that come and help us out on the weekends for emergencies. Sure. But I think we have about 9 or 10 that are, stable veterinarians there.
Yeah, so that's a pretty large practice. So when you first started managing inventory, did you like it, or were you kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this, or were you ready to jump in more?
It was kind of a combination of anxiety and ready to take it on. There were numerous ones that were doing it prior to me. And it seemed like they would do it for a couple months and get frustrated and then hand it over to somebody else. So it was definitely some anxiety starting.
Yeah, I can imagine. What did your training look like when you first took over inventory?
Well, the girl that kind of handed it over to me was amazing. And she really kind of walked me through a large majority of it. We had just started kind of implementing the tag system. So that was kind of a big process, but she really helped me out in that transition.
That's awesome. That's amazing that you had her support kind of while you were going through that process. So tell me, what does your inventory system look like now? How does it function?
Well, thankfully, we moved to Avamark. We did have client tracks before, which was, in my opinion, kind of a nightmare when it came to inventory. So right now we have Abamark, which tracks way better. We do have the tag system in place. So anytime there is, need to order, everybody just, pulls the tags. I do have a bin for the, need to order tags to go in. And then when I am done ordering them, they go into already ordered bin. I did have them. This was kind of a trial and error. I did have them right next to each other. And I noticed that people would pull the tags, but then put them in the wrong bin.
Oh.
So we are nowhere near each other now. But I mean, I still randomly will go around and, just make sure everything is, has the proper tag on it and just make sure everything has a tag. Sometimes they go missing or I don't know where they go. I just make sure everything does have a tag. And it actually works pretty well right now. Do you have an inventory book that people can write if for some reason there's no tag for it? Like random, toenail trimmers or something, reservoir bags. Like I don't have a tag for that. So if we need some, they can write in that book that we need some. Yeah, it works pretty well.
That's great. So do all of your products have a tag for the most part? Like all of your pharmaceuticals, all your white goods, stuff like that?
Yes.
And then, so do you use Avamark then to flag items too with the reorder points?
I'm actually just starting to do that.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, that's something I am starting to do currently. Because like I said, last time we had client tracks and it never worked out. The reorder points would be way off. So with the Avamark, I guess when we first got it, we've had it for, I would say, I guess a year now. Maybe not even a year now. So yeah, I just started doing the reorder points for that.
Awesome. How's that process going? How are you finding that kind of going and working for you?
Much better. I still do kind of double check just because I want to have that, backup. Just
Sure.
make sure everything is tracking right. But yeah, I haven't found any problems with it so far.
Awesome. Yeah, I like how Avamarks is set up as far as like adding the reorder points. And then I find it so easy that the sales tab, to look at how much you're using in a month, how much you're using in the last 12 months is so accessible. So I really like Avamark for kind of adding those reorder points. So that's awesome. And then do you have any other like products that you especially track in your system, like things that you run out really frequently, or do you have any tips for people who are kind of just getting started adding their reorder points in their software?
We seem to run out of syringes a lot. Well, we used to. We don't need more, thank goodness. But it was mostly a reorder point error. Sometimes we would use a ton, and sometimes we wouldn't, we'd go through 2 boxes in a day, it seemed like. So I guess, I would use the red dot system at first, and then, just see what we were using, what we weren't using. And that actually kind of opened my eyes a lot to see what we weren't using.
Yeah.
And then with the stuff that we were running out a lot, I honestly just check it more or order, have the reorder point a lot higher than any of the other products.
Sure, that makes sense. And so if anyone who's listening doesn't know what the Red Dot Challenge is, it is where you place like a little red garage sale sticker dot on all of your products, and then you check to see how many dots are remaining after 30 days, 60 days, and then 90 days. And like Rebecca mentioned, it's such a great way to visually see what products are moving and which ones aren't. It seems like such a low tech solution, but I feel like Rebecca mentioned, it really is eye-opening to be like, oh, because sometimes I think we get in our head and think, oh, this product moves really fast or we use a ton of it. But then in reality, maybe that's different. So doing that red dot challenge can kind of be very eye-opening. So that's awesome. And then, so what do you think have been the most helpful strategies for you as far as, managing your inventory for such a large practice that not only is general practice, but also, emergency and specialty?
There's a couple things. Since we do have a large staff, at first, any of the orders that we were getting in, they could, unpackage, tag, and put away. And there was a lot of error in that. Tags were getting put on the wrong stuff. They're being put on the wrong reorder, placement. So we actually moved it so that only 2 people can actually, has authorization to open, tag, and put away. That was a huge game changer in the clinic. Way less human error, I guess you would say. And then, that honestly was a big one, especially for such a large clinic.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a lot of moving pieces. So to make sure it's done correctly every time is going to be, I'm sure, very important for you. So then what are some of your favorite tools for managing inventory? Like, do you lean on your practice management system a lot? Do you use Cove? What has been really helpful for you?
I absolutely love Cove. That is, I love Cove. That is such a game changer.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I really just having a good support system with all the reps.
Mm-hmm.
Just that communication is huge. I have some really great reps, and they will actually, some of them will text me and be like, hey, this is going on back order. Do you want me to, send you some? So that's huge. Having even the inventory group on Facebook just to see what other people are doing, what other people have done is just, just have that support is amazing.
That's awesome. That was kind of my goal when I created the group because, like you, I first started managing inventory. Normally there's only one of us in a practice, and I was like, did not have a support system. And so I was really struggling, and I was like, there's got to be a way we can bring people together. So that's really a passion of mine. So I'm glad that has been helpful for you.
Yeah, extremely.
Good. And so anyone who's listening who doesn't know what Vet Cove is a purchasing platform exclusive for veterinary practices. And it's kind of like kayak.com or expedia.com, but for veterinary supplies. So it syncs all of your distributors, the availability and pricing information into one spot. So it totally changes the game, and it's free for private practices. So if you aren't using it yet, I highly recommend you checking it out because, as Rebecca mentioned, it really is a game changer. And it just makes your whole ordering process so much more efficient. And so when you first started taking over inventory, was there anything that you needed to do to kind of improve the system? Or did you kind of just keep with the same policies that had been prior to you taking over?
I guess I would say that I continued on that route.
Mm-hmm.
Because we just started doing the tag system. It wasn't quite in place yet. We were still, making tags, labeling tags, and really, finding what reorder point works for us. And then, it seems like, and every vet clinic can probably attain for this, depending on what season it is, you have to kind of ignore that reorder point. Like right now, we're getting a bunch of snake bites at our clinic. So my anti-venom is greatly, increased when I'm ordering and will be throughout the summer. So you just have to kind of play with the reorder points. But for the most point or, most part, it was already, getting to be in a better place as a whole.
That's awesome. So what do you think has been kind of the biggest challenge for you in managing such a large and kind of diverse practice? What do you find is your biggest challenge or obstacle?
People pulling the tags. We are very fast paced. And so I think people are just not paying attention sometimes. So I will find myself just going through and just making sure that tags are getting pulled.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the big challenge because there's sometimes that the tags will go missing or they'll grab the box that's way in the back rather than the front, just stuff like that. That's
Sure.
the biggest challenge.
That totally makes sense. And how many hours a week do you find yourself managing inventory versus being on the floor?
I kind of do it all together.
Okay.
So I work 13-hour nights, and of course, I will deal with all the hospitalized patients and emergencies. And then in between, when I have time, I will work on inventory. Sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes I am on ER mode the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just have to do it first thing, before I leave for the day. Yeah, it's a balancing act. But for the most part, I mean, it was a lot harder when I first started because
Uh-huh.
it seemed like it didn't have any structure, honestly. But now that I've been doing it for so long, it seems to flow pretty well. And I don't necessarily have to spend, hours going from every single product in our hospital. So yeah, it works pretty well. So
That's amazing. So wonderful that you kind of learned the flow of that. What do you think has been your biggest and greatest accomplishment when it comes to managing inventory or just being a veterinary technician in general?
my biggest accomplishment inventory wise is just really kind of looking at the big picture rather
Mm-hmm.
than just, like one thing. And when I first started, that's kind of how I saw it. And that was real, like, that's where my anxiety kind of drew from. Um,
Sure.
if you look at the big picture, it seems to be a whole lot easier. Things start to flow better. You start to realize, like, you see the numbers and you notice, oh, hey, in, May, we use a whole lot more of this, or, it's going to be Thanksgiving. We need to order way more Serenia. Like,
Yeah.
it's just kind of, learning that flow, and yeah, it makes it a whole lot easier.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think to your point, you bring up such a great point because, when we are like on the floor and being part of the care team, everything is very detail oriented a lot of times. But then when we kind of shift into inventory, we really have to look at the big picture and the details at the same time. So, that is such a huge accomplishment to kind of have that mindset shift, from going to being on the care team to kind of, managing hundreds and hundreds of products at any one given time. So that's amazing. So that is definitely a huge accomplishment. Is there anything you wish you would have known or learned sooner when you first started managing inventory?
I mean, probably that everything is going to be all right, and it's okay to run out of certain stuff randomly. I
Hmm.
used to be scared to death about running out of stuff, but I mean, it does happen. Like, we're human, like, mistakes are going to
Yeah.
get made sometimes, and it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
um, and thankfully, like, all the clinics around here are super awesome. And, we usually can call and be like, hey, can I get some of this? So yeah, that's,
That's a big one. And I feel like it is really common to, I remember I took it so personally. I felt like I was failing at my job and I felt like I like could not get it together and then I was like failing my team when I ran out of something. But I think, just remembering, like we said earlier, kind of that bigger picture is a big thing.
yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
yes. Is there anything that you would recommend to other inventory managers as far as a resource or a book or anything you found particularly helpful or inspiring?
Well, pretty much everything that you do.
Oh,
um, Honestly, helps a ton. Like, you've explained stuff so well, and it just kind of clicks and makes sense. It's really helpful. And then Vet Cove, of course, helps out a ton. And then, of course, having, the Facebook, and you can kind of pick, other inventory managers' brains.
hmm,
Um, just having all of it as a, kind of your backup, um,
yeah.
feels good. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy kind of our community of inventory managers that we've created in our little corner of the veterinary world. So before we wrap up, I'm curious, what is like the most interesting case that you've ever seen, or just like a case that always sticks out in your mind?
Oh man, there's so many. I did, this happened years ago, years ago. We actually had a little German Shepherd puppy that was either eating by his brother or something, but the brother ended up taking a little chomp out of his shoulder. So we literally came in with really nothing left. But one of our amazing emergency doctors nursed him back to health, and he actually has a functioning arm. Or was obviously like a front right leg, I believe. But just I guess like my mindset was like, oh man, that's a bad one.
Yeah.
And she really thought outside of the box and got him back to being a healthy puppy.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think one of my favorite parts about being in the veterinary community is just seeing all of the creative and ingenious and just all the creativity and innovation. It's so inspiring all the time. So that's so cool. Is there anything else that you want to share? Anything else that you could recommend or suggest to other listeners?
I would just say, just finding that support and then just keep doing you. I mean, you are going to have those hard times and you are going to struggle sometimes, but it's all going to be okay. And you're going to find your niche, and it's going to be so much easier, even during this lovely pandemic time.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, I just love your spirit of positivity and enthusiasm. I just love it. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time today and sharing your story. Truly do appreciate it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I had a great time.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Inventory Nation podcast and spending your time with me. I know your time is valuable and in short supply, so it truly is an honor. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe or leave a review. Be sure to visit vetlogic.co/podcast to access the show notes and discover additional links and resources. See you next time.